The night Luna Nozawa escaped from custody was drenched in rain and trembling with electricity. The storm had rolled in from the Pacific hours earlier, turning the coastal highway into a ribbon of black glass. Somewhere in that chaos, under the flashing red and blue of distant sirens, Luna ran barefoot and breathless, the hem of her prison uniform torn and clinging to her skin. Every heartbeat pounded with one thought, one name, Will. She believed he was waiting for her, that his arms would open the moment she reached the beach, that her nightmare would finally end in redemption. But the road leading down to the sea was slick, the air thick with rain and exhaust. Her vision blurred under the blinding glare of headlights cutting through the storm. She heard a horn, a scream, a crash, and then nothing. The impact threw her off the asphalt, her body rolling down the muddy slope like a broken doll. The world fell silent around her, the rain hissing against the stillness. By the time the headlights faded and the car disappeared into the distance, Luna's heartbeat had stopped. Her last breath was not a scream but a whisper, Will's name dissolving into the night. At dawn, the news traveled fast. An unidentified woman, mid-20s, found dead by the coastal highway. The prison uniform told part of the story. The rest was whispered by wind and gossip before the official report even arrived. Bill Spencer was the first to receive the call. The voice on the other end spoke in the detached tone of tragedy made routine. The fugitive Luna Nozawa has been found.
She's dead.
For a moment, Bill couldn't breathe. Not because he mourned her, but because of what her death implied. Luna had been a shadow hanging over his family for months, a ghost haunting his son Will's future. Her obsession, her pregnancy, her crimes had tangled them all in a web of scandal and danger. Now that she was gone, the relief he should have felt refused to come. Instead, there was only unease, a creeping sense that this story had not ended, it had only changed shape. Katie Logan stood at the kitchen window when Bill told her. The rain hadn't stopped, and the ocean outside their Malibu home looked wild and merciless. She turned slowly, her face pale, her lips trembling. They found her. Her voice cracked on the last word. Bill nodded.
She didn't ask how.
She didn't need to. Some part of her already knew this wasn't just another news story. It was something intimate, terrifyingly personal. Later that morning, the police report arrived. The investigators believed the impact had come from a luxury sedan, dark color, high horsepower, possibly one of the cars registered in the Malibu area. Katie froze. Her fingers tightened around the coffee mug until it cracked. A picture flashed in her mind. Headlights, rain, the sound of something hitting the car. She remembered gripping the steering wheel too hard, her vision swimming, her heart pounding with fear. But she had told herself it was a dream, a side effect of the sleeping pills she'd taken after the panic attack that followed Luna's escape announcement. She had woken up in her own bed, the car parked neatly in the garage, the world seemingly unchanged. Now, the words in the report clawed through her memory, like ghosts demanding recognition. She set the mug down and whispered, "It can't be." In the driveway, the car gleamed under a thin film of rain. To anyone else, it looked flawless. But when she stepped closer, the illusion broke. The front bumper carried faint scratches, streaks of rust-colored residue that could have been dirt or blood. Her knees weakened. She ran her fingers over the marks, feeling the sharp edges of guilt before logic could intervene. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was from the grocery cart last week. Maybe. But when she crouched lower, the world tilted. There, beneath the headlight, was a fragment of fabric, gray, torn, and unmistakably out of place. Katie stumbled backward, clutching the hood for balance. The wind howled through the palm trees, and the ocean roared like judgment itself. The car stood silent, complicit, gleaming with secrets. Inside the house, Bill's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, detectives, old contacts wanting statements. The rumors were already spreading. Luna's death was no accident. Someone powerful had silenced her before she could expose something dangerous. The tabloids whispered one name, Bill Spencer. He had the motive, the means, and the ruthlessness to protect his family. Bill said nothing. He let the headlines multiply, let the police cast their suspicious glances, let the city murmur about revenge and cover-ups. The silence became his shield, his confession, and his curse. He knew what had happened that night, or at least part of it. He remembered the argument, Katie's trembling hands, her desperate insistence that she needed to go, that she couldn't let Will be hurt. He had begged her not to drive. She had swallowed a pill to calm down, said she would just go for air, that she'd be back in 10 minutes. When the door closed behind her, he told himself she would be fine. Now, staring at her from across the room as she wiped invisible dust from her trembling fingers, he knew. He didn't need proof. The truth was written all over her face. Katie could barely meet his eyes. The guilt was corrosive, eating through every layer of denial. She kept seeing the headlights, the figure on the road, the flash of impact. It replayed in her mind on a cruel loop, each time clearer than the last. She wanted to tell him, to fall apart in his arms and confess everything. But the words wouldn't come. Because saying it aloud would destroy everything, her freedom, her family, her last shred of peace. Meanwhile, the police intensified their investigation. The forensic team collected samples from the crash site. Luna's blood, mixed with rainwater and mud, was traced to the road near the turnoff leading to Will's beach house. It didn't take long for suspicion to tighten its grip around Bill. He had been at the center of too many scandals, too many cover-ups. The narrative wrote itself. Powerful father eliminates threat to his son's reputation. It was almost too convenient. Reporters gathered outside his gates, cameras flashing like vultures circling a carcass. Did you kill her, Bill? Was this revenge? Are you protecting your son? He walked past them without a word. His silence only fed their hunger. Katie watched it all unfold with a kind of detached horror. Every lie Bill let the world believe was one more brick in the wall between them. He was protecting her, she realized, but at what cost? Each headline painted him as a monster. Each whisper turned him into the villain of a story she had written with her own trembling hands. At night, she couldn't sleep. The sound of rain on the roof felt like accusation. She dreamed of Luna, broken, bleeding, eyes open but lifeless, lying by the roadside as the ocean swallowed the light. Sometimes Luna spoke in the dream, her voice soft and mocking. You didn't kill me to save Will. You killed me to save yourself. Days bled into nights. The investigation deepened. Detectives arrived with search warrants, examining Bill's vehicles, his phone records, his alibis. They found nothing because Bill had already ensured there was nothing to find. He had hidden the truth the way he hid everything dangerous, cleanly, efficiently, without emotion. The damaged car was his first priority. He had wiped the bumper, replaced the grille, and told his assistant to send it for routine maintenance. When the forensic team asked, the vehicle gleamed spotless under the fluorescent lights. But what haunted him wasn't the cover-up, it was Katie. He watched her unravel quietly, her movements mechanical, her smile fragile. He wanted to tell her that it would be fine, that he would bear the weight of suspicion forever if it kept her safe. But each time he looked at her, the question gnawed at him. How long could she live with a lie? One night, unable to bear the silence, he found her standing by the ocean, barefoot, the wind tangling her hair. She turned when he approached, her eyes red, her face pale as the moonlight. It was me, she whispered before he could speak. I think I killed her. Bill froze. The confession wasn't a surprise, but hearing it out loud broke something inside him. Katie's voice trembled as she tried to explain. The pills, the panic, the drive she barely remembered. The headlights, the sound, the numbness after. I didn't mean to, she said, her voice collapsing. I just wanted to make sure she didn't hurt him. He reached for her, but she stepped back. You should tell them, she said. You shouldn't let them think it was you. But Bill shook his head. No, his voice was low, steady, and final. If they need someone to blame, let it be me. The simplicity of his words struck her like a slap. She wanted to protest, to refuse his sacrifice, but the truth was unbearable. She couldn't face the world knowing she had killed someone, even by accident. She couldn't face Will, couldn't face herself. Bill's silence was her only salvation, and her punishment. The weeks that followed were a slow descent into torment. The investigation reached a dead end. The coroner's report confirmed Luna had died instantly. The police couldn't prove foul play, but public opinion was merciless. Bill's reputation suffered, his businesses faltered, his name became synonymous with scandal once more. Through it all, he never spoke. Katie tried to function, to smile, to work, to act as though her life hadn't been built on a lie, but the guilt followed her everywhere. She saw Luna's face in reflections, heard her voice in the wind. Each time she looked at the ocean, she imagined the crash, the way the car jolted, the sound of bones breaking. She began to write letters she never sent, confessions addressed to no one. Meanwhile, Will, oblivious to the secret tearing his parents apart, withdrew into silence of his own. He had loved Luna once, or at least the idea of her. Her death reopened wounds he thought had healed. He blamed himself, believing she died trying to reach him. The guilt gnawed at him too, creating a chain of unspoken grief that linked them all. One evening, Katie found Bill in his study, staring at a photo of their family. He looked older, heavier, as though the silence had aged him. "You can't keep carrying this," she said softly. He didn't look at her. "I can't," he replied. "Because you can't." Tears welled in her eyes. She wanted to believe that love justified everything, that his sacrifice was noble. But deep down, she knew what it really was, a reckoning postponed. Lies, like ghosts, never stay buried forever. The first crack appeared months later, when a witness surfaced. A truck driver, passing by the highway that night, claimed to have seen the accident. He described the car as silver, luxury, possibly driven by a woman. The police reopened the case. Katie's world began to crumble. Each news update felt like a countdown. Bill tried to intercept the story, to suppress it, but the press smelled blood. The whispers returned, this time sharper, more personal. Maybe it wasn't Bill. Maybe it was her. Panic consumed her. She started avoiding mirrors, conversations, even sunlight. Every sound of tires on wet pavement sent her flinching. Her reflection looked foreign, her smile a stranger's. The guilt had devoured her completely. One night, unable to bear it, she drove back to the spot where Luna had died. The rain returned, just as it had that night. She parked by the guardrail and stepped out, her bare feet sinking into the mud. The road still carried faint stains, rusty remnants of that night's tragedy. She knelt and touched the earth, whispering an apology that vanished into the storm. Behind her, headlights appeared again, Bill's car. He got out, drenched, and stood beside her without speaking. They stayed there in silence, two souls bound by the same sin. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. "It's done, Katie. Let it go." She turned to him, eyes hollow. "You can't bury something that lives inside you." He didn't argue, because she was right. Luna's death had become part of them, etched into their love, their guilt, their silence. In the months that followed, the investigation quietly closed. The evidence was inconclusive. No charges were filed. The story faded from headlines, replaced by newer scandals. But within the Spencer household, peace never returned. Katie's laughter was gone, replaced by long silences and sleepless nights. Bill carried on as if nothing had changed, but in the rare moments when the house was still, he would pour a drink and stare at the ocean, wondering if he had done the right thing. He told himself he had saved her. But the truth was darker. He had condemned them both to a lifetime of ghosts. Years later, long after the world had forgotten Luna Nozawa, the memory of that night still haunted him. Every storm brought it back. The rain, the headlights, the sound of impact. And sometimes, when the wind howled against the glass, he thought he could hear Luna's voice whispering from the sea, not in anger, not in vengeance, but in sorrow. Because in the end, her death was not the end of her story, it was the beginning of theirs. A love bound by silence, a guilt that refused to die, and a truth that lived forever between them, as relentless and unforgiving as the ocean itself. The morning after Luna Nozawa's death was eerily still. The storm had passed, but its aftermath lingered in the air like a bruise. The ocean that had roared through the night now murmured with deceptive calm, its waves washing over the stretch of sand that had borne witness to tragedy. News spread like fire. The escaped inmate Luna Nozawa found dead near the coastal highway. Within hours, it was everywhere, on television screens, on phones, whispered across coffee shops and newsrooms. But inside the beach house, the silence was absolute. While Spencer sat on the floor by the window, his eyes fixed on the horizon, unmoving for what felt like an eternity. The announcement of Luna's death had struck him like a physical blow. He didn't remember sitting down, only the sound of something breaking, perhaps the coffee cup, perhaps his composure. The name Luna echoed in his mind, not as the monster the world believed her to be, but as the girl he had once tried to save. He told himself he hadn't loved her, not really. He had only pitied her, wanted to help her, wanted to be the kind of man who could fix someone so broken. But pity, when left unchecked, had its own cruel intimacy. He had been the light she chased, and in the end, she had died running toward it. Now she was gone, and all he could see was the chain of choices that had led her there. He replayed the moments like a confession, the phone calls unanswered, the warnings ignored, the chance to intervene lost to hesitation. I could have stopped her, he thought, his chest tightening. I could have saved her. But even as he told himself that, another voice whispered the truth. Luna had been beyond saving long before that night. He had seen it in her eyes, the wildness, the desperation, the belief that love could rewrite consequence. Still, knowing that didn't ease the guilt, it only deepened it. Electra Forrester moved quietly through the house, her footsteps careful, her expression composed. To anyone watching, she was the embodiment of compassion, steady, nurturing, the devoted partner comforting the man she loved through unbearable loss. She knelt beside Will, resting a gentle hand on his shoulder. "She's at peace now," she whispered, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. "You did everything you could. This was her choice, not yours." Will looked up at her, eyes rimmed with red. "She didn't deserve to die like that." "No," Electra said softly, pressing her hand against his. "But people like Luna don't escape the things they've done. She destroyed so many lives, Will. Maybe this was inevitable." Her tone was calm, rational, almost soothing. But deep within her chest, beneath the controlled breaths and practiced empathy, panic pulsed like a hidden drum. She had spent the morning staring at herself in the mirror, rehearsing grief, smoothing every tremor that threatened to reveal the truth. Every time she blinked, she saw it again. The flash of headlights, the shadow on the road, the moment she didn't stop. The fight had started hours before Luna's death. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside the house. Will had seen movement near the dunes, a figure in the rain, distant but familiar. He had gone pale, his mind instantly conjuring Luna's name. Electra, terrified and furious, had begged him to call the police. But Will refused, insisting that if it was her, she needed help, not punishment. They argued, voices rising, words turning sharp and cruel. "You still feel sorry for her," Electra had shouted, trembling. "After everything she's done to you. To us?" "It's not about that," Will replied. "If she's here, she's desperate. She could be hurt." But Electra saw something in his eyes, a flicker of guilt, of tenderness, that she couldn't bear. It wasn't love, not anymore, but it was something too close to it. She couldn't compete with the ghost of Luna's suffering. In a surge of hurt pride and fear, she grabbed her keys and stormed out, the echo of her departure swallowed by the thunder. The drive had been madness. Rain lashed against the windshield, lightning fractured the sky, and her hands shook on the steering wheel. Every nerve screamed at her to turn back, but pride kept her moving. She told herself she just needed to clear her head, to prove she wasn't the fragile woman defined by Will's pity. But as she neared the coastal road, a shadow darted out from the side, a figure drenched in rain, waving frantically.
Luna.
Time splintered. For one fleeting second, their eyes met through the windshield. Luna's wild, pleading, terrified. Electra's heart seized. Fear and fury collided, and in that moment, reason vanished. She didn't brake, didn't swerve, didn't think. Her foot stayed on the gas. The impact came with a sickening thud that tore through the night, followed by silence. The car skidded to a halt. The rain fell harder. Electra sat frozen, hands gripping the wheel, heart pounding so violently she thought it would burst. She turned her head, saw Luna lying motionless on the wet asphalt, her hair fanned out like a dark halo. For a moment, Electra thought she might move, that maybe she had just fallen, maybe there was still time. But the stillness was absolute. The world tilted. Her breath came in shallow bursts. A voice inside her screamed to get out, to help, to call someone, but another voice, colder, steadier, whispered that it was too late. That nothing could change what had just happened. That stopping now would ruin everything. It was an accident, she told herself aloud, her voice trembling. Self-defense. She was dangerous. She wanted to hurt us. The words were a lifeline, and she clung to them with desperate strength. Then, with one last look at Luna's lifeless body, she put the car in reverse, turned around, and drove into the storm. By the time she reached the beach house, her face was streaked with tears and rain. Will was waiting at the door, panic written all over him. "Where have you been?" "I thought." "She was there," Electra interrupted, her voice breaking. "I saw her. I thought she was coming for us. I was so scared." Will's anger melted instantly, replaced by concern. He pulled her into his arms as she trembled, sobbing into his chest. The lie came easier than she expected. She told him she'd driven off when she saw Luna near the property line, afraid to confront her. She said she didn't know where Luna went after that. By morning, when the news broke, she played the part perfectly, shaken, fragile, terrified that Luna's ghost still lingered. The police, meanwhile, had their own theories. Luna's escape, her proximity to Will's house, her sudden death, it all pointed to one narrative. Bill Spencer had intervened. The father protecting his son, silencing a threat. The idea spread fast, feeding on Bill's history and reputation. Reporters camped outside his gates, cameras flashing, questions shouted into the wind. Will begged his father to tell the truth, but Bill only shook his head.
"Let them talk," he said.
"I don't answer to vultures." His stoic silence only deepened suspicion, but he didn't care. Protecting Will was worth it. What he didn't know was that he was also protecting someone else. Electra hid her guilt behind compassion. She became Will's savior, his anchor. Every time he broke down, she was there, soft hands, soft voice, soft lies. "You couldn't have saved her," she whispered whenever he blamed himself. She made her choices. He believed her, clinging to her comfort like oxygen. He didn't notice the shadows under her eyes, the way she flinched whenever headlights passed outside, or how her fingers trembled when she poured his coffee. But guilt is a living thing. It doesn't fade, it festers. Every sound became accusation. The rain on the roof, the hum of the refrigerator, the buzz of her phone. Sometimes she thought she heard Luna's voice in the static, whispering her name. At night, she dreamed of headlights cutting through rain, of the moment she didn't stop. She would wake in cold sweat, the image of Luna's face still seared behind her eyelids. Then came the investigation. A week after the funeral, the police began reviewing traffic footage from the stormy night. Most cameras had been blurred by rain, but one, an old highway unit near the bend, caught a glimpse. The quality was grainy, but clear enough, a dark coupe speeding past at the exact time of the crash. The shape, the lights, the partial plate, too similar to ignore. Electra found out before Will did. The detective called while she was alone, his tone polite but pointed. "We're verifying vehicle matches. Do you mind if we take a look at yours?" Her hand tightened around the phone. She smiled, a perfect, rehearsed smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course, she said, voice steady. Whatever you need. That night, she barely spoke. Will assumed she was exhausted. He had no idea the walls were closing in. Every lie she'd built now felt fragile as glass. One more push, and it would all shatter. She thought about confessing, ending the spiral. But then she saw him, his face still broken from grief, his guilt, his faith in her, and she couldn't. The truth would destroy him. It would destroy everything. So she began to plan again. Lies within lies, all carefully constructed to protect the only life she had left. When Will mentioned the police request, she feigned surprise. They think it's Bill's car, don't they? They always do. They'll twist anything to blame him. Her tone was soft, persuasive, just like before. Slowly, she redirected his suspicion, toward his father, toward the narrative everyone already believed. When the police came to inspect her car, she handed them the keys with trembling grace. What they didn't know was that she'd spent the previous night in the garage, scrubbing every inch of the vehicle until her fingers bled. She had replaced the damaged headlight, repainted the bumper. The evidence that once screamed guilt was now buried beneath polish and denial. But as the investigation deepened, so did the cracks in her composure. Each day became a battle between survival and conscience. Will, sinking into despair, began to talk more about Luna, how she didn't deserve to die like that, how he wished he could have been there. His words cut deeper than he knew. Every mention of Luna's name was a reminder of the woman Electra had left to die. Then came the moment she'd been dreading. The detective returned with a still image from the traffic cam. It showed the blurred outline of her car passing under a streetlight. Not definitive, but close enough to haunt her. "We're still reviewing it," he said, watching her reaction. She smiled faintly, her voice perfectly calm. "I'm sure it's just coincidence." But her heartbeat thundered so loud, she was sure he could hear it. When he left, she locked herself in the bathroom and stared at her reflection. The mask she wore was flawless, every line, every expression carefully in place. But beneath it, she saw the cracks forming, widening. She didn't know how much longer she could keep pretending. Will entered a few minutes later, worry etched across his face. "You've been distant," he said gently. "Is it the investigation? Or is it me?" She turned toward him, tears welling up, not all of them fake. "I'm just scared," she whispered. "Scared they'll never stop blaming your family for something none of you did." Will took her in his arms, holding her tightly. "We'll get through this," he said. "Together." The irony almost made her laugh. Together. The word tasted bitter. But fate has a way of unraveling lies at the moment they seem most secure. Days later, the police obtained enhanced footage from the Department of Transportation's central database. The image was clearer now, still grainy, but unmistakable. The vehicle's shape, the license plate partially visible. It wasn't enough for an arrest, but it was enough for suspicion to shift. Will found out from a news report. The anchor's voice was steady. Authorities now believe the vehicle that struck Luna Nozawa may belong to someone close to the Spencer family. He turned toward Electra, his face pale. "They're not saying it's Bill anymore," he said slowly. "They're saying someone else." Electra's pulse raced. "That's absurd," she replied too quickly. "Who else would it be?" He hesitated. "The footage, they said it's a dark coupe. Like yours." The room fell silent. For the first time, she saw doubt flicker in his eyes. Her stomach twisted. "You think she began, her voice breaking. "You think I killed her?" "I don't know what to think," he admitted, his voice trembling. "You were out that night. You wouldn't tell me where you went. And now, don't," she said sharply, her control cracking. "Don't you dare." But the damage was done. The trust between them, the fragile illusion she had fought so hard to maintain, was collapsing. That night, she sat alone on the balcony, watching the waves crash against the rocks. Confession hovered on her lips like a ghost she couldn't exorcise. Part of her wanted to tell him everything, to let it all burn, to be free. But another part, the darker, louder part, refused. She had come too far, sacrificed too much. If she fell, she would drag someone else down with her. The next morning, Wolf found her packing a suitcase. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Away," she said, not meeting his eyes. "Just for a while. I need space. I need to breathe." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "If I stay," she whispered, "I'll destroy us both." And then she was gone, leaving him with a house full of ghosts, a past full of questions, and a truth that still lay buried under the sound of rain and headlights. In the days that followed, investigators confirmed what Will already feared. The car caught on camera matched Electra's make and model. They wanted to question her again, but she had vanished. No forwarding address, no trace. Her disappearance reignited the media frenzy. The woman who comforted Will Spencer after Luna's death now missing. Police suspect link. Will stood on the same beach where Luna had once called his name, the wind whipping through his hair, the ocean merciless as ever. He realized, with a hollow ache, that love had destroyed them all. Luna's love had been madness, Electra's love had been fear, and his own had been blindness. The sea whispered like confession, endless and cold. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, a reminder that truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its way back to